and welcome to Mtok News, bringing you information of the Christian world. I'm your national news anchor, Dustin Pfeiffer. And for our first story tonight, Roe v. Wade, which was passed back in 1973, is currently being challenged. As you've seen in recent months, multiple states have passed laws such as the Heartbeat Bill and the Dignity Act, which have directly challenged Roe v. Wade, which is a federal, which was federally passed by the U.S. Supreme Court. There are pro-life activists who are now making arguments and speaking with the United States Supreme Court about this and providing pro-life arguments which are scientifically based and which have been said include a large amount of scientific evidence that would not have been available in 1973, and that is in their hopes and prayers that this evidence will help to overturn Roe versus Wade. However, states are still currently passing pro-life bills to a sense of sovereignty within their own states. However, will not affect the country at large, but will continue to build momentum for pro-life activists to currently further the agenda for pro-life to protect the life of unborn children. Now, there is still currently not a lot of information on this story. However, we will continue to follow this in weeks to come as this story progresses. In our next story, we have the Fairview United Methodist Church, which is now going to be known as Christ Church, as it finalized its deal with the United Methodist Church for its removal as well as 4 campuses which are under its jurisdiction. This particular church boasted about 2,000 members, which in its area, it had the largest congregation in its region. And this was a mutual decision that they reached with the United Methodist Church, and an untold sum of money was given to the United Methodist Church for the ability to keep the 4 campuses under this church's jurisdiction, which again will not be under the United Methodist Church's administration. There will be a brand new church which currently has conservative views. The pastor said that this was very peaceful and went very well, considering that it could have gotten a lot worse and could involve more strenuous legal battles, but it didn't, and so they're very happy that things are happening the way they are. However, they are not the first church and probably won't be the only church, as I reported earlier this year, that the United Methodist Church will meet in August, or late August, early September, for the General Assembly, which will contain a vote whether to split the church, which most likely it will lead to a split in the church between the liberal and conservative side. The liberal being known as, continuing on as the United Methodist Church, and the new church born out of it will be known as the Global Methodist Church, which will contain its more conservative ideals. Now, please note that this vote has not happened, and even still, please know what your church is. If it's still continuing to know as the United Methodist Church, it is a progressive church, which in light of current politics, you can understand that progressive, or in my case, regressive, meaning that it will be allowing for LGBTQ persons to become ordained ministers, where the conservative side, or the Global Methodist Church, will hold to the traditional values that will require them not to be LGBTQ, and which would not allow the LGBTQ person to be ordained as a minister. Now, the Global Methodist Church, as a result, will, if this is passed in September, will draw up a new guidelines, new articles of faith, and it will be a brand new church and starting everything brand new. Again, under a conservative flag rather than the progressive flag, as the way the church has been going with the United Methodist Church. And that is all for our national news. We are now going to go over to John with our international news reports.
All right, well, thank you, Dustin, for those reports. We'll be sure to follow those up. And now we will head over for your international reports for the week. So first up, we're doing a follow-up in Israel. So after 11 days of fighting, a ceasefire has been reached between Israel and Hamas. If you recalled, we did report on the fighting last week during our Hot Topics reports. So on May 20th, the Israeli cabinet agreed to a ceasefire with Hamas. This will be this was implemented Friday morning, and Israel agreed after they have crippled Hamas's military wing. They have destroyed much of the terrorist group's supplies and killed many of their military commanders. We do grieve for the loss of civilian lives on both sides of the conflict. We would also like to report that Israel will be replenishing their defenses, which they used to defend themselves from the terrorist strikes that were launched at their people. Future hostility will be met with the same decisive action, we've been told. So that's just a little follow-up for you. Israel and Hamas are currently at a ceasefire. This was coordinated this week, and hopefully this will keep things at peace for a while. So now we're going over to Burkina Faso. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I've never actually done a report for this nation. So on Tuesday, and this is very sad, unfortunately, during a baptism, suspected jihadists attacked and opened fire on the group. 15 Christians were killed. No group has been directly linked to the attack as of yet. However, violence from groups such as Al-Qaeda and other Islamic terrorist groups has been on the rise in West Africa since the beginning of this year. So it's believed that one of them is responsible for the violence that's going on. Now we're going over to Iraq, where a United Nations investigation team has declared that the Islamic State of ISIS committed genocide against the Yazidis people. This is following up two reports from 2014. A total of 1,444 suspected perpetrators, including 14 deemed most responsible for the genocides, have been listed. These include some of the funders for ISIS. Some are worried, though, that even though the team has concluded ISIS is responsible for genocide against the Yazidi people, Iraq may not render a fair judgment. So, something to note is that the case is being handled by the Iraq domestic courts, but many do not believe that Iraq will render a fair judgment in favor of the Yazidi people. Some are requesting that the UN send their findings to an international criminal court and that the trial be held there. Next, we're going over to Indonesia with Yasmin Church, a congregation that has been under government intolerance for the past decade. In 2010, the church was denied access to their building. The mayor at the time had given in to pressure from intolerant groups that didn't want the Christians in their community. He denied their building permit, trying to revoke it, stating that several signatures on it were forged. However, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of Yasmin Church. The mayor ignored this ruling, and the congregation has been forced to meet outside for the past 10 years. When Mayor Arya was elected in 2019, it was hoped that the ruling of the Supreme Court, as well as the religious liberty of the congregation, would finally be upheld. Instead, Mayor Arya tried giving the church a different plot of land, despite the fact that their claim to the current plot and building is valid. The church has finally had enough, informing the mayor that if this intolerance, which by not doing anything about, Arya seems to be in support of, continues, they will be forced to take matters to the national level. And lastly, we will end in India with a very sad story. So on May 18th, Pastor Ramesh Bambaria, I do hope I'm pronouncing that name correctly, and his family were attacked by a mob of Hindu extremists with swords, sickles, and a gun. They were beaten with these implements. They tried to kill Pastor Bambaria, but the gun wouldn't fire. Later, they pointed the gun at his 52-year-old father, Bhima Bambaria. They shot and killed him. Pastor Ramesh and two family members were also knocked unconscious after this. It does get worse. They were taken to a government hospital for treatment, but the hospital refused to admit them, citing COVID-19 restrictions behind their refusal to administer treatment. They were later admitted to a private hospital. Pastor Bambaria refuses to bend the knee in the face of such religious intolerance. He says he will continue to serve the Lord. He has already given up so much for his faith, and he will not be silenced. He is afraid, though, for his family, and he worries about what will be done to his children after he is gone. Furthermore, he says he will probably not be able to attend his own father's funeral since he is hospitalized. And unfortunately, this story doesn't surprise us here at Many Tribes One Kingdom. It has become clear that the Indian government is either incapable or unwilling to bring Hindu radicals like the ones who killed Bhima to justice. Attacks like this are all too common for our longtime viewers. And for our brothers and sisters in India, we are grieving. Still, the government of India does nothing to try and bring this violence and intolerance to an end. No one should die like Bhima just because they love Jesus. Yet that is common practice in India, where mobs of Hindu radicals seemingly run free. We want you to please join us in praying for our brothers and sisters who have suffered so much of this intolerant and violent treatment, and we want to pray for God's mercy and that these persecutors would realize their mistakes and repent to the only true God. Once again, please keep Pastor Ramesh and his family in their prayers, and please remember Bhima Bombaria, who gave everything for his faith. And we just ask now that the Lord will be with his family and that he will watch over these faithful servants of his. And with that, we would like you to stay tuned for our hot topics of the week.
Thank you guys for sticking with us. We will be sure to pray for the Christians in those countries. Now we're going to go over to our hot topics for today. So for our first hot topic, a California judge has ordered a payout from the California government to a local church that was, fighting against the California's COVID restrictions. John, can you bring us a little bit more light on this?
Yes. So if you've been following Mtok news for a while, then you know we've reported, or if you've been following any current events, then you would know that during the COVID-19 pandemic, the California government, specifically under Governor Gavin Newsom, targeted Christian churches to an excessive degree, placing restrictions on them that were not placed on secular businesses or anything like that. And the Supreme Court did rule in favor of the Christian churches a few months back, if you remember Dustin reporting on it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we think this is a good thing. At least I do. I can't speak for Dustin.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a big win for Christian churches. Not only is this a victory in the sense that they're getting a payout, which they are using only to cover attorney fees and costs of operating the courts. But this is now going to set a precedent in the state of California and as well as across the country, because this was not just a district court or a court of appeals. This was the United States Supreme Court, if I'm not mistaken, the United States Supreme Court making this decision, which means this is a countrywide decision that's going to set a precedent about how the church is going to be treated, how the First Amendment rights are going to be treated in this country, that states cannot just pick and choose, even in the midst of a quote-unquote pandemic. They can't make a decision to greatly affect the church that they're not also implementing on other businesses outside the church.
Yes, and this is also going to set a precedent because several other states kind of joined in the group that was specifically targeting churches. New York was well known for their treatment of Christian churches while forcing them to stay closed, yet allowing places like bicycle shops to be open. And many people noticed a very large inconsistency in this. Why is it that religious gatherings are being forced to close, yet secular businesses that are non-essential are being deemed essential and allowed to stay open? And so this really caused a problem because this was a violation of our U.S. Constitution. We do have freedom of religion, which does separate us from the rule of the government in the sense that we can operate as a church. We're not under the rule of the government. The government doesn't tell the church when it can and can't be open. That is the decision of the church.
Separation of church and state. I know it's not a government it's not not an amendment to or a part of the Constitution. However, it is a promise from the government to the church. And it's an issue when atheists like to throw this at the church, but when it's the other way around, it's just somehow seen in a different light. And In this case, I'm glad that justice prevailed and religious institutions are allowed to stay open. And not just that there it will be penalty for going against it.
Yeah.
And this is recognized at the federal level, not just at the local level, but at the federal level.
Yes, and they will be protected in the future from similar treatment. The COVID-19 pandemic was not just the end-all be-all for all of this. This will protect them in the future should, heaven forbid, another disease or virus or anything like that, another thing break out. This will protect us as Christians from illegal treatment at the hands of individuals such as Governor Gavin Newsom.
I think that's all we got for our first story. Now we're going to go over to our second one. Now, this is a disclaimer. First off, this
viewer discretion advised.
Yeah, viewer discretion is advised. There's no derogatory, there's no profanity in this, but some of the language that is used may bring cause for younger viewers to become confused or take a view or research into this area. So a coalition of 700 sexual exploitation survivors have come to the courts come to Congress to advocate for an immediate investigation into MindGeek and its subsidiary Pornhub for its inclusion of child pornography as well as material. I'm sorry, what, John?
Non-consensual material.
Exactly. Which in this country is called rape.
Yes, and the fact that MindGeek and Pornhub profited from this, it can and should be listed as a form of human trafficking, as some survivors have pointed out.
Exactly.
They did not consent to this. They did not consent to Pornhub making money off of them. And the fact that they continue to do so is a very big problem, especially in a country that's supposed to be understanding and just.
Exactly. I mean, Canada has already taken to it. 70 of their lawmakers have called for an immediate investigation into MindGeek and Pornhub for this. And any victory in this area will greatly help these victims, because there's one victim who on here has stated that it's still day 1292 that videos of her naked videos of her are still on the internet after she has asked for them to be removed.
Yeah, and it's disturbing. I'm going to be completely open and honest for a moment here. Mm-hmm. It's very disturbing. If you guys can't tell, I'm already getting uncomfortable, because this stuff like this shouldn't be happening. And I am disgusted that anyone could allow this kind of behavior to continue. This woman has made it very clear she did not consent for this stuff to be on their website, and yet they put it on there. I am disgusted that anyone could look at this stuff, and I am disgusted that any executive could hear her pleas for it to be removed and just ignore them.
I mean, this does show the depths of human depravity. I mean, I'm speaking from experience with this. I can understand it is alluring.
It is.
It's very hard to break that habit. But what I'm going to implore you, if you watch this, whether you're Christian or not, stop. Because what you're doing is you're lessening the value of the people who are in the act, whether it's consensual or not. This is something that is very horrible and demeaning towards, again, the people who are committing these acts, as well as not just that, but people outside of this.
The people who are viewing it,
not just that, but I'm saying, well, if you're a man, you go and you see this stuff, you're going to find it to be acceptable to do that to a woman out in the street or out in, broad daylight. You're going to think it's acceptable behavior, and that's not what should happen.
Because, and speaking from personal experience, this was before I was saved, and it was a long struggle for me afterward. It lessens the value of our sisters, of our fellow, the women who we call, fellow humans. It lessens their value. And a little bit of advice I would tell you is that, and something that really helps me through it, is, for me, I thought about it like this. You know, people think this is acceptable. Well, what would you do if that was your daughter who was forced to go through something like that? And this kind of stuff, it's unacceptable. We here at Many Tribes One Kingdom, we condemn human trafficking, and we condemn things like child pornography and all of this. We condemn it. We condemn the pornography industry for its degradation of humanity and its treatment of women and children and men as objects to be used by uncaring people.
And this, I mean, I'm at a loss for words for what else I can actually say about this. This is ridiculous. It's appalling. And you know what? This is also a failure on the church for not teaching the value, or consistently teaching the value of humans, not consistently teaching the value of sexual relationships, not continuing or accepting how the world is. We need to teach, and I mean really, really teach. Hammer it down. You hit that nail on the head until it's driven well into that wood. Because that is ridiculous if we do not do so. Because if you leave any room for doubt, any room to where we find this acceptable, then it is a failure on us. And if you are a teacher in a Christian church, teach against this kind of stuff. Now, I'm not saying, you don't have to teach that pornography is bad. Teach the value of humans. Teach the value of each individual person as God's creation. You teach them about a pure sexual marriage. Yes. That it is not horrible, that is not horrifying, and it's not degrading to the people involved. It is ridiculous that the church is allowing this to happen, and and I'm sorry if that sounds like I'm condemning the church. I'm only condemning those who are failing to teach this.
And we need, listen, it's going to be uncomfortable. I understand that. Like, I can't even talk about anything that has to do with the human body without getting uncomfortable. That's just the kind of person I am.
Yeah.
Get uncomfortable. Even if it has nothing to do with sex or anything like that. Like, I get uncomfortable if someone touches me on the arm.
Yes.
But you have to do it. Guys, ignoring it won't fix it. Because your kids, listen, I'm going to speak to the parents of the church for a moment here. Your kids are going to learn about this stuff.
One way or the other.
That's a fact. You can't protect them from learning about it. What you can do is make sure they learn it the right way. What you can do is make sure they learn the correct facts. Would you rather them be taught by the internet and by, people who have no emotional attachment to them and who are more interested in making money or continuing a narrative? Or would you rather them learn from you, their parents, the person that you're supposed to make sure that when your child leaves your home, they are fully equipped to take on the world. And if you don't talk about this stuff with them when they're young, I'm not saying pull aside your 5-year-old child and talk to them about it right now. But guys, listen, puberty happens. You need to make sure your kids are prepared for it. And you need to make sure that you talk to them about everything. Even if it's uncomfortable, good. The more uncomfortable it is, the better, because that makes sure you will teach your children the right things.
Teach them the godly things. The Bible is there for a reason. It's not just a book that you read every Sunday. No, it is an instructional material used for you, for God's good in you, not a Sunday only book. It has very important information that is applicable to your daily lives. And like John said, don't pull aside your 5-year-old child, but if they start expressing urges like that, the signs of puberty are coming on, it's time for you to sit down and have that conversation and start that process.
And if they ask a question, answer it.
If you don't know the answer, find it in the Bible.
Yes. All right, I think that's everything we have. I kind of think we should give our viewers something a little bit lighter. So with that, let's head over to our media report.
Thank you, Dustin. And now I will do the media report for the week. I'll be reading off the top 10 Christian songs for this week. And at number 10, we have Be Alright by Evan Kraft, Danny Goke, and Ready Me Too. I just want to apologize if I mispronounce any of these names, by the way. Please don't get mad at me. But continuing on, at number 9, we have Less Like Me by Zach Williams. At number 8, we have Gyra featuring Chandler Moore and Naomi Rain by Elevation Worship and Maverick City Music. At number 7, we have Stand in Faith by Danny Goke. At number 6, we have Good God Almighty by Crowder. At number 5, we have Battle Belongs by Phil Wickham. At number 4, we have You Say by Lauren Daigle. At number 3, we have Help Is on the Way, Maybe Midnight by Toby Mac. At number 2, we have Hold On To Me by Lauren Daigle. And the number 1 Christian song for this week is Too Good to Not Believe by Bethel Music and Brandon Lake. And now we'll go to the organization for the week.
Thank you for staying tuned with us. Now for our organization of the week. Our organization is the Pro-Life Action League, which is an organization that was started by Joe Scheidler back in 1980. Now, what Mr. Scheidler and his organization have done, and the organization still does to this day, is help provide information about abortions, but also how for you to become an activist in the pro-life movement. Also sharing sharing events that the Pro-Life Action League is doing, such as protests and prayer vigils. Now, unfortunately, Mr. Joe Scheidler passed away in January of this year. However, it is now currently run by his son, Eric Scheidler, who is going to be currently charting the course into the future and to teach teaching the modern generation about how to fight against abortion and the real facts, and even surviving a lawsuit by several abortion clinics as well as women's rights groups for their stance on it. And it was a 20-year-long legal battle, which the Action League did eventually win in 2006, and now is building off of that momentum even to this day to continue to fight for the baby's life in the womb. We thank you guys for sticking with us, and we hope that you have a most blessed weekend. Thank you, and good night.